Hi, Stinkies. My name is Donny Dogbreath, and you're listening to the first episode of my brand new podcast, The Dog's Breath. We're sitting down with Philip Barber today. He's an AI art creator, and we're going to be talking about his work and what inspires him and what his life experiences are. If you enjoy this podcast, I'd greatly appreciate you giving a like, maybe leaving a comment, and giving me some feedback, as well as sharing this with your friends. I'll be leaving some links to Phil's work in the description, as well as some bookmarks. So if you want to just hear about a particular topic, you could just skip right to that. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Okay, great.
Oh
Okay,
boy.
man. Thanks for joining with me today for the first episode of my new podcast. That's really cool. What an honor.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's an honor too.
No, appreciate it. Thank you. So, getting right into it, Phil, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, how would you describe yourself, like who you are at the basic terms?
Uh, a disappointment to my family.
Oh man, do I feel it. Like whenever I see them, it's always, how I'm messing shit up, but when I'm away, oh man, I miss you and yeah, no, I totally get that, man. But, you kind of figure out your way. Um no, so to AI, because I guess that's how most people know you, so the Cursed AI group. What brought you into the group? What kind of struck your interest? And I guess we'll kind of move there into like kind of the
Uh,
motifs,
it,
so to speak.
uh, I I don't know, or rather, I don't remember what got me into the group. I joined it a while before I started posting, and the first thing I posted, I believe, was CCTV footage of an Amtrak locomotive robbing a bank. And it's
Gotcha.
just,
Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna ask you if it was leaking any yellow fluid.
No, this was before. No, it was before the P, and it just got so big, like it even made its way to like train groups I'm in,
Oh,
and
okay. So you're in train groups.
yeah, that's even worse, I think.
Man, don't get me wrong. I have a little bit of the train-tism myself. Trains are pretty cool. So in regards to cars and trains being kind of the subject of a lot of your work, would you say that kind of comes from personal interest? I know you've mentioned before cars. I've seen a couple pictures of your current car, actually. If you'd love to get into maybe your interest in trains and cars, and what does that look like outside of AI?
Uh, Outside of AI, it is a horrible money pit. My father, his when I was a kid, he had a 1986 Buick Century sedan, and I mean it wasn't that old of a car at the time. It was 10 years old. But I was born and raised in and around DC, so it wasn't the middle of nowhere. I was around new cars very frequently, and even then I knew, hey, my dad's car is old. So, and when I got my license, started delivering pizza, I was doing it in my mom's Ford Explorer, and I was thinking to myself, we can no longer survive on just one car, and both of us have different jobs. And if I'm going to
Right.
get a car, I'm going to buy a car that's just like my father's, some shitty front wheel drive General Motors product. And I was delivering pizza to a guy, and he was selling a 1985 Buick Skylark, which I mean it's not a century, but it was like the same generation, same years. It was just a compact. The Century was a midsize, so I bought it and I delivered that until the head gasket blew up, and then I bought a 1993 Dodge Dynasty. That was a real piece of shit. I bought that for $900, and it really showed. I don't know what it is about Chrysler products and having horrible electrics. Like the wiring is just awful,
Hmm.
but when I first bought it, it had this issue where if you kept the lights on for over 15 minutes, they would just start cutting off and on. And I don't know what it was. I guess replacing all the fuses did it. But it was just so weird. I'd be driving down a road in the middle of the night, and I would just my lights would just they would just start cutting off and on all by themselves, and I'd have like a car on coming the other way. They would start flashing their lights off and on at me, and I'd be like, "Oh no, what did I start?" And then that fucked up, and I bought a 2014 Hyundai Accent, which I mean it surprises me because when I was a kid, Hyundais and Kias were just awful, terrible. The cars you only bought if your credit score was like sub 300, and
Right.
but I mean, admittedly, they're good cars, and I've had it for like 3 years. And just a couple weeks ago, I had to get a new shift cable because I just dropped a pizza off, and I go to back out of the guy's driveway, fucking nothing. It's still in park. I'm like, oh boy. So I go back to the guy's house, knock on the door. Hey, can I borrow your phone book? I gotta get my car towed. So, but I mean, the if that's the worst thing to happen to it in 3 years compared to uh literally having to replace something every oil change or thereabouts with the Buick and the Dodge, I mean, I'm not complaining at
Right.
all. Yeah. And
No, I
relative
totally
to
know what you mean.
yeah,
Sorry, go
and
ahead.
relative to my I think it's relatable because everyone everyone either has a car or they've ridden in a car, they've seen a car in a book. Everyone knows what a car is to some extent. And if you've owned a car for long enough, eventually it's going to leak something, be it coolant, transmission fluid, radiator fluid, something like that. You're going to have some kind of issue where it leaks, and it's a pain in the ass. Uh, at the time, you're like, "Oh no, this is horrible. It's leaking radiator coolant. Uh-oh." But but it like even if it's a pain in the ass, then it's one of those things where you look at months, years later, and you're like, haha, that's funny. I remember that.
Right. I
Yeah.
totally know what you mean. I've owned a couple of fucking hoopty cars myself. I'm currently pushing a 94 Explorer.
Oh
Um,
boy, fucking OJ spec.
no, for what it is. I mean, three of the windows work. When I got it, only two worked. Only one of the seat belts worked. So essentially, whoever's in the passenger seat just had to hold the end of the seatbelt under their ass and hope that I don't
Yeah.
hit anything.
Yeah.
It's just I totally know what you mean. Where once you've owned enough piece of shit cars, you're like, oh yeah, this is a relatable experience. You have like those weird, fucky quick fix me it's because when you were going back to the headlights, I'm like, oh, that's like how my door doesn't entirely shut on the driver's side. So you just and the problem is the handle on the inside doesn't work either entirely. So what I'll do on the highway is pull the window all the way down, put my hand on the outside of the door, and then just let the door out, then just slam it back in with the outside of the door.
Yeah,
So
my mom's Ford. She has an Explorer, but it's 2003, so I think its generation is the one after your generation of Explorer. But I mean,
yeah,
it has the same issue where like you close the door and you think it's closed and you make a turn and it just swings open and you're like, oh no. So yeah,
yeah,
Fords are crap. But one thing you could say about Fords, they haven't been bankrupted and needed a bailout like General Motors and Chrysler did. Chrysler did twice, I think. So I mean,
Right. It's a piece of shit, but it's also a piece of shit where you know exactly what you're getting yourself into.
yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, if you want a new car that's dependable, just buy a Kia, buy a Hyundai. They've gotten much better since when I was a kid. So,
Right. So I've owned that. I had before that an '02 Golf, which I thought was a really good deal. I bought it off a dude I was working with for like 600 or 700 bucks.
yeah.
And I should have known because he made me fucking like sign this clandestine contract where it said like I accept the responsibility of whatever comes with this vehicle. I promise not to return it. I understand that the vehicle is in this condition. Da 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 da. And originally, he told me that the evap was bad, so that's the
Like the
emission
oxygen.
system. Yep. And I was living in California at the time, so you couldn't smog it. So I replaced it, which isn't too hard. And the rotors are bad, right?
Hmm.
So I find that out pretty quick because just whenever you stop, it's just this grating, like really awful sound. So I end up backyard mechanicking my way out of that one. And yeah, I thought it was a good car for a minute. The problem is this dude also decided to lower his car on his
Oh
own.
no. Well, I mean, it's California, so it makes sense. Everyone does that there.
Yeah. No, totally. So he Mickey Moused it, in his backyard. So this was like an actual static lowering job that he did, but he did it so shittily where the alignment was permanently aligned to like the furthest right you could go. So I aligned that car maybe 10 times. The guys at the Firestone knew me on a first name basis, and I could just never get the car straight.
Yeah.
Um, and surely enough, what was happening is every single time I would start it, this huge plume of gas would come out every single time you start it, and not like your normal condensation. So surely enough, the gas line was fucked. The car stopped working, and it was a bad. What is it? Oh, so this guy didn't live in the best area for, I say this is someone who lives in an area that's known for catalytic converter stealing, but he decided that the way he would prevent someone from stealing his cat converter was by welding it into place. So
I feel,
cat converter goes bad, and I have no fucking clue how I'm going to fix it because it's welded into place. I took it to mechanic and they just kind of shrugged and they're like, well, there's nothing really we can do. So
I,
you're right. Every car does end up leaking something. Maybe
I
that's
feel
gas.
like I feel like one perk of lowering a car is I mean apparently that's not the case, but lowering it would probably deter catalytic converter thieves because you can't really get under it unless you like jack it up or get like a forklift or something. And by the time you monkey with all that, you're already caught. So I don't know.
Right. I don't know why he didn't think of that because he lowered it to the point where I couldn't get my foot under the car. It was that low.
Yeah,
Um, he tried to install a skid plate. So there's some guy who only does skid plates for golfs, somewhere in Texas, and makes the kit himself, welds it himself. And the way that he designed this skid plate to work was by using molly bolts, and molly bolts are like what you use like for your walls, right?
oh
So
no.
the problem with molly bolts is not only do you need to have the particular type of drill, which he didn't have, you also have to push it in like pretty firm. Like you have to be guiding it the entire way. So none of the bolts were in correctly. So when he gave me the car, he warned me that it dings really easily, on turns, on sudden changes in slope, or what do you call it? Speed bumps. And
Yeah.
it was actually not the car. It was the fact that the skid plate was just completely hanging out, and he never looked at it. And I was driving off a exit, and suddenly just the entire skid plate came out.
Yeah.
It
Yikes.
drug. Yeah, no, big yikes. Um, and surely enough, I just took it off and never replaced it. I just never bothered with it. I sold it on Craigslist, and Car worked just fine after that. No skidding. Apparently, he hit um, the speed bump in our community. We went to the same community college. He hit the speed bump so hard the oil plate just came clean,
Oh
like
boy.
dented. So it's funny when you have a car like that. It's like, yeah, it's a piece of shit, but it's my piece of shit. Um,
I bought another Buick Skylark. I bought it from a guy in Illinois. Same generation as my first Buick for like 4,000 something dollars, and plus the shipping costs to get it shipped down here. And for just just for fun, I drive it for my job, pizza delivering, and I was driving through a neighborhood with those big, like those abnormally large speed bumps that are there to like slow you down to like 5 miles an hour, just to, and if they don't, your car goes airborne. But I drove my Buick over that, and I forgot there was a speed bump coming up. I was looking at my phone like an idiot, and I go over it, and I just come back down. And I hear a loud clunk, and my car stalls out,
oh
and I'm like,
no.
"Oh no!" So I start it, and it wouldn't start normally. I mean, I mean, the engine rotated, but it wouldn't turn over. So I had to, and it was a carburetor issue. I guess there's something about carburetors and not wanting to be shook up that much. So I had to put my foot down to the floor and turn the key to unflood it, and it worked fine. But it's just, I don't know. There's something about speed bumps and cars that don't mix. But yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. I was at a concert here in Portland, and I drove the back. And I'm used to it because I drive an Exploder, so I accidentally drove up onto the sidewalk, and just something about that when I stopped, it just completely stalled. It was the first time that the car gave me that type of shit because for I've owned this car since August, and I haven't had many issues aside from the fact it's burning and leaking oil. Um, and all the mechanical stuff. I haven't had it stall like that. I just wonder if it's something with just that sudden incline, just hitting that really hard that just for some reason makes it give out.
Well, that generation of Explorer wasn't carbureted. 94 would have been fuel injected, wouldn't it? Because they all moved to
Yeah, I'm
fuel
pretty
injection
sure.
by then. Does your Explorer idle a lot? Like, does it idle rough? Does it shake like a Parkinson's guy or whatever when you're like a stop or something?
No, that's the crazy part. I figured it was fuel injected, but no, it doesn't do any idling. The
Hmm.
sometimes if you let it, idle for a little bit and you turn it off and you have like the radio or headlights on, even for like a minute or two, it just whoosh,
Hmm.
just really slowly start. Like I can see the battery and maybe the starter going bad soon, but no, the idling is not bad because I know what you're talking about. I knew a guy
Yeah, it would
who
be like the motor mounts, like something got shook up and.
Right. No, I saw it. So I was looking at pictures that you posted recently, and I saw that you had a new hoopty for doing pizza delivery. So when you had the Hyundai, when you were driving that Hyundai, were you like, man, this is too reliable. I need to go back to basics. I miss this.
No, no, that was when that was when the Hyundai was in the shop for the transmission shift cable, and I couldn't not work because I have bills to pay, and I didn't want to use my mom's Explorer because it's having issues of its own. So I just took my Buick to work, and it it, it was just for a couple days. It wasn't any particularly long shifts. It was just like opening shifts, 4 o'clock to 9, 10 o'clock to dinner rush. I mean, people like the Buick. They're like, "Oh, I haven't seen one of those in forever," or "That's a nice car." Blah blah blah. And I mean, there's cars are old cars are interesting because you buy a new car and so many years pass to where it's like, oh, this car is old, it's a piece of junk, and then eventually it starts bouncing back like, oh, I haven't seen one of those cars in so many years. The other day, I was at work and I saw a Jeep Cherokee, like an early '90s Cherokee, and it had antique tags on it. Because in Florida, your car has to be like 30 years old to be eligible for antique tags. Yeah, yeah, 30 years old. And I was thinking to myself, that's 30 years old. And I was delivering pizza to a guy who he had like an old Chevy Fleetmaster, some Meadowbrook, some old Chevy from like the 40s you'd see in some fucking noir movie. And we were making small talk. I'm like, "Oh, do you did you change the gas system in that, or are you having to mix gas together? Because a lot of those older cars from like the 50s older, they don't take the kind of gas that we put in our cars. They take like they get gasoline used to have lead in it, just like everything else back then, and
Hmm.
that's why you see some cars from the 70s, 80s, 90s say unleaded only. So and yeah, and he was like, "Yeah, I have to mix something with it." I'm all like, "Oh, that's cool. I have some old cars too. I have a '82 Buick Skylark," and he's all like, "Ugh, that's not a classic." And I'm all like, "Well, fair enough. You probably remember when they were new." So I don't know. I mean, it's subjective, but
It
yeah,
totally is
I
subjective. It
yeah,
really is because and that's kind of the beauty of having a car that's actually not desirable because I was more in the rural area of Oregon until like very recently. So it snows
mhm,
half the year, so I wanted something with four-wheel drive that can traverse easily, deal with ice. So, the popular car in Oregon, aside from the late generation XJ Cherokee's great, but Subarus are really what's in demand here. So you'll get some crazy listings where someone will have some old Subaru Legacy 98, 97, and they're like, there's no seats in it, the engine is not even in the car, so it won't run, it's covered in dirt and shit, but yeah, 8, 9 grand or best offer.
no low
So
balls. I know what I got.
it's a mechanic special.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Subaru was out of the question. Jeeps, Mike.
Oh, you broke up a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. I was saying when you're looking at used Jeeps, I find that a lot of them you'll see some red flags right away. It's like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. Um, so I ended up going with the Ford, but I'd love to have a Jeep. But that's kind of the best part about finding something that's a little bit of an uncovered gem is because it doesn't have the name not it doesn't hold its value the same way. But you deal
Yeah.
with crap like that, it's like, oh, it's not a Jeep, it's not a whatever. So do you have any kind of transitioning over? Do you have any like dream cars, like in terms of
Oh.
old vintage cars, like in the future, what would you love to own?
When I was a kid, I had Starsky and Hutch for the PlayStation 2, and I thought that was the coolest game ever. They had a 75, 76 Ford Gran Torino, and I was all like, when I grow up, I want one of those. And it's cool when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, you actually look at that car relative to other cars, you realize it's rear wheel drive, so it's bad in snow. Right, snow's not relevant here in Florida, but if I had to take it anywhere, uh, it's a 3 speed automatic, so it's not even that sporty. It's got the big stupid engine. It takes half a tank of gas a day, so it's like it's not that good of a car. So I mean, it looks fine, I guess, but it's one of those things that as a kid it gets ruined for you. But I don't know. I mean, that's probably the only real dream car I had when I was a kid, and I just kind of fell into the Buick Skylarks. Uh, I would love to find one with a stick, but it's just so hard to find that generation of Skylark because they're so undesirable. The only people that bought them were like grandmothers who had to go to church, and of course you don't get the sticks. You get the 3-speed automatics and the air conditioning and the AM radio because Granny listens to All Things Considered all the time, so she doesn't need to pay for the FM. I don't know. It sucks sometimes being a car guy because you run into stuff like that, and it's like, it's just hard to find parts, and it's just hard to keep things running sometimes, and it just gets to a point to where I don't know, like you feel like you have an obligation sort of to keep these cars preserved because it's like, who cares about Buick Skylarks? Who cares about Reliant K cars? I got one that's just rotting in my garage with the 4-speed stick, and it's like, what am I going to do with it? I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just keeping it just to keep it. So I don't know.
Right, almost like a small museum of the unsung heroes. The actual average car, that someone would have had, first thing out of high school or, had hand down from grandma.
Yes, the
Um,
hand-me-down museum, the only museum where I have to pay to leave.
no, I think that's kind of cool because instead of, my cousin, I think his first kind of piece of shit car was he got like an early 90s Mazda MX-5,
Oh
which, is
boy.
like a huge fucking death trap of a car.
Yeah.
So they're fun to drive, but why not go the other direction? It's like, yeah, I drive a couch on wheels. I drive a Buick.
Yeah, I mean, if even with new cars, if I had say 40, $50,000 to spend, I would spend it on like luxury as opposed to performance. Like what, like the Hellcats, the Chargers, whatever they're making. Like, why do I need? I mean, obviously the question is because you're cool. Why do I need a car that goes that fast? Why do I need a car with a 8-speed automatic transmission, whatever it is they come with now? Like, why do I need all this performance if it's just me in the car? Who am I racing? Why can't they just go back to making like K cars and just affordable cars that don't have any gimmicks, no frills or nothing? They're just basic. You look at Chrysler in the 1980s. They made the K car, and that saved
Mhm.
them. That saved them from their bankruptcy. And now all Chrysler's making is trucks and performance cars. It's like there are no normal, affordable budget options from Chrysler or General Motors or Ford. I don't know if Ford does or not, but
I think they're
it,
moving away from making the Fiesta and the I forget the name of their other mid-level size car, the Fusion.
yeah,
Um I think essentially what happened with the American car manufacturers is in the late 80s, early 90s when Toyota really started making it big in the United States is like they're like, "Oh yeah, we should do that too. We need to compete on that because they're making cars that are affordable, reliable and, for the everyday guy." But in this age, where the Camry has sold, millions and millions of units, they're like, fuck it. We're just going to, throw in the towel." I think that's where they're at this point where they're like, yeah, we can make these huge SUVs and we do them well and people like them. We offer something unique and now they're just not in the business of making small cars, which is disappointing. I think really the formula that works at least for General Motors is rebadging, right?
oh,
They
definitely.
would
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, General Motors. I look at I want to like General Motors so much. My dad had a Century. It, when he got out of the army, he had an El Camino. Uh, I have two fucking Buicks. I should like General Motors, but then you look at stuff like uh like the Buick T types, the Buick GNX. Why would you make a sporty luxury car when you already have Pontiac and Chevrolet? Why do you need two European brands? You know, General Motors is literally like the anti too big to fail idiom. Like they
Yeah,
just had too many things going on, and uh-oh, they don't have Holden anymore. They don't own Vauxhall and Opel anymore. Pontiac, Oldsmobile, they're gone. Buick, they only have Buick because it's so big in China now. It's like, wow, what the hell happened?
right. And the Buicks they have anymore are not even that overly unique. I mean, some of the newer ones don't look terrible, but it's just purely serves as the mid-level between buying a Chrysler and buying a, Chevrolet. But yeah, you could just buy the Chrysler at this point. Um, I think, the whole big boxy, built to last, you know, big steering boat era is kind of gone with Buick. It almost like Buick has lost its Buickness, if you know what I
That's
mean.
true.
Um, yeah, no, as a kid, we had a Suburban and that thing lasted forever in our family. I mean, those things are built to last. I pretty much grew up in the back of that car.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of sad to see that go. And I mean, some people, you know, are still into the Suburbans, and I mean, that's if you have money. That's my thing. Is like either they're too worn out at this point, and if you're, someone who's mechanically inclined, that's another thing. But I haven't seen too many on the used market that are really worth their salt. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you've seen different things, but it seems that the early 2000s Suburbans I grew up seeing and riding in are just kind of gone at this point.
Oh, it's like the same with the Chrysler vans from around the same time. I remember when they were new, the Town and Country and the Caravan. My friends' parents would have them, and I'd ride in them, and like, wow, this is fancy. And the only time you see a late '90s, early 2000s Town and Country is if it's driven by some I don't know, some carpenter that's smoking crack and can't afford an actual work van, so he got a used one from a buy here pay here place. There's tools all over the floor, menthols all in the cup holders. But I mean, I guess it's just a natural evolution of things. Like eventually, things are just gonna we're gonna change how we perceive things. We're gonna I don't know. We can't tell the future, but we can look at what it was like in the past and see how he changed perception on that and use that as a model, I guess. Because nothing's ever going to be the same way it is. I mean, it sucks, but I mean, what can you do about it? I wish it was
Right.
2004 forever and ever and ever because McDonald's had the value menu, but I mean, I don't know. It's whatever. We could just hope the future gets better.
No, I know what you mean. I think there's some people who intentionally have been trying to accelerate things. I know in California, they've been really pushing on electric vehicles, but the technology is not there. The affordability is not there. I think people have grossly, overlooked the viability of getting used cars. They're so quick to say, well, we need to stop manufacturing gasoline cars and we need to move to electric, even if, that means putting much more emissions into car manufacturing and tossing the cars that we do have. I think we're moving so fast where it's like we're not there yet. I don't think we're there in terms of technology. I think, I remember when the Prius really started to catch on and,
Yeah, that was a
hybrids are
big
a new
deal.
thing. Oh yeah. And I got a hand-me-down insight from my parents for a little bit. They're nifty little cars. They handle well and they're efficient and have decent room. I'm surprised that we're still not, behind the Prius and even the Mirai that they had for a little bit. Toyota did, where they were what that was like hydrocarbon, or I'm trying to remember if you know what I'm
I was
talking
in
about. The Toyota
I was
Mirai.
in Germany about like a decade ago, and they had cars there that ran on LPG gas. I don't know how affordable it is, and I don't know how really efficient it is. But I mean, I haven't seen any LPG cars over here, so I don't know. There's ways out there we just aren't tapping into.
Yeah, I think we're just skipping through technologies so fast to the point where not even they're being universally adopted. Um, I think we've only really started to see the beginning of the hybrid age, and I think there's
Yeah.
still a lot of potential in that. I'm sure, you know, delivery being your main trade, I'm sure, there's a lot of appreciation for having a car of that sort where it's efficient, it's got enough space to do what you do, reasonably comfortable. Um, I'm doing Shipped as a side hustle, which it's doing Target deliveries, so I
Oh,
enjoy that
cool.
hustle a little bit. Um, but having the truck, man, it's just it just drinks gas. It's almost borderline not worth it. I
Yeah.
mean, unless I do it like on weekends. Um, so back to pizza delivery. I mean, just to kind of maybe beefing things up, but I always find this interesting. Like in terms of all of these years you've been doing pizza delivery, driving around various cars, making interactions with people. What are like some of the most notable and bizarre interactions you've had with people
Hmm.
doing that?
I was delivering a pizza to this condominium, and it was one of the ones where you have to call the guy to get him to come downstairs. They don't let you go up. And I do that, and he's insistent that I go up. He's like, "Oh, just go up. The door code is blah 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 blah." I'm like, "All right, whatever. I'll just go up." So I get on my car. I go up to the elevator. This fat Indian kid, maybe about my age, he's like, put the pizza on the table. Blah blah blah. And I'm all like, "All right." So I do that, and uh and he says, "I got a weird question for you." I'm all like, "All right." And he says, "I'll give you $70 if I can blow you." And I'm like, "What?" And he
Holy
says,
shit.
"Yeah, yeah." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm sorry. I got places to be, blah blah blah." And he's all like, "Oh no, I'm sorry. Wah wah wah." And I'm all like, "It's okay. It's whatever." And he uses that as like he tries to like reach into me, and I'm all like, "No," and I just leave. And I just get back into my car and drive back to work. And the whole time I'm driving back to work, I'm thinking to myself, I should have extorted his ass. I just got done watching American Beauty the other day. I should have been like, how about you give me that flat screen of yours and I won't tell anyone. I'll just angle it out of the trunk of my Buick, tie a little red flag around it. I mean, should have at least got something out of it.
Right. No, that's man, I've read like on Reddit like pizza delivery or delivery people stories and you'll hear shit like that. I'm like, that is insane to be a normal happening. So that's crazy. Is that the only time something of that absurd level happened or like how frequent is that, between your own experiences
Not
and
at
other
all.
people?
Not at all. So, some guy dared his wife to answer the door naked. That was about it. I've been delivering pizza for about a little over 9 years. So yeah, I mean
Right.
it's not as crazy as people say it is, but I mean it's not bad. It's a living.
Right. No, I'm sure. I'm sure that's a lot of alone time for you. Are you when you're making AI images? Because I see you're posting quite frequently at all sorts of different times. How much
Yeah.
of that like is on the job?
Never. I don't have any AI apps on my phone or anything. I just do it all at work. Not do it all at work. Do it all
Oh,
do it all at the house. I just get on my computer after work or before work, and I uh and I just punch in whatever dumb crap Orphie vehicles, whatever's annoying me that particular moment, and I just put it online.
okay. No, that opens up the door. So Orphie is another theme I see in your work, even though not as much as the vehicles. Where does that inspiration came from? How many do you have them at home? How many do you have?
I have a lot of them at home. I have too many to count. I'll probably take a picture and to you later so you can put it on screen for whoever's watching. Uh, I used to date a girl who was really into squishmallows, which is
Hmm.
like it's like a stuffed animal. It doesn't have any limbs. It's like a pillow. It's
Right.
like my generation equivalent of Beanie Babies because they all have names, they all have personalities. So we're dating, and she's all like, "Oh, Squishmallows." I'm all like, "Oh my god, this is so cool." And so anyway, we break up, but for whatever reason, I don't get an aversion to Squishmallows because I don't know. I dated this one girl in high school and we played San Andreas a lot. And when we broke up, I couldn't play that dumb game for years. But I'm just like, wow, I love Squishmallows so much. And I went to Target in 2021 and they were selling Orphie. He's a cute little yellow octopus, and his story that you can find in his little tag is he's a kid. Canonically, he's a kid. He gives off big baby energy. He's going away to sleepaway camp for the first time, and he's so nervous because he hasn't been away from his parents for so long. He knows that he knows he's gonna have a good time and make friends, and that I don't know. There's just something poetic about that to me because, like, you're afraid, you're unsure of something, but you just got to go through it, and you'll be right. And I know that sounds stupid to hear as an adult, but I mean, it's always good to get a reminder of that stuff.
Oh, I totally know what you mean. I find that, being in my mid 20s, now living on my own, being out of college, where a lot of the media and stuff that I connected with as a kid, like suddenly resonates with me again in a different way, just in terms of, again, navigating on your own. It's like, man, things are not great right now. I'm broke, there's always stuff going on. You know, I'm exhausted by the time I get home, but man, things are gonna be all right. So like, I totally know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like some kind of assurance. And I remember
Mhm.
this one time I get home from work or get home from whatever. I was just miserable. Something about a girl. It's always about a girl. And I'm thinking like, wow, I'm going to take a lot of pills. And I'm looking at my pill bottle and I think to myself, what about Orphie? Because my dad committed suicide by cop when I was like
Mhm.
9 years old. And look at me now, I'm fucking making peeing cars on Bing. I don't think I wound up good from that. And I don't want nothing bad to happen to. I don't want Orphie to have to grow up without a father making peeing car artwork. So it's like I don't know. In a weird way, these are like my kids. They give me something to come home to. They give me something to strive and improve myself for. And I guess in a wider sense, Orphie doesn't have to be a squishmallow. Like Orphie could be a pet. Orphie could be an actual child. You just need something to ground you in reality. Not
Right.
a hobby, not a hobby, but like just someone or something to always be rooting for you and something to help you do the right thing.
Yeah, it's someone you're doing it for. You know what I mean? You're in those tough moments, like you said, which, I mean, first off, I'm really sorry to hear about your dad. That's
Don't worry
really
about it.
rough. But with no, I know what you mean. You're in those tough moments, you want to give up or whatever, and you're like, man, I'm doing this for Orphie. Orphie's counting on me, we all need someone who counts on us no matter what. I think that's what it is there's a great assurance of like, man, I'm doing this for someone else. They count on me. I can't fuck this up.
Yeah.
So no, that's a beautiful thing. I think we all find that in some ways, I mean, I have a couple of stuffed animals, like kind of getting more back into that sort of thing. like stuff like that U2's is making right now. They make some various plushes for content creators that are pretty cool, but
Aw.
no, um, no, I know what you mean. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast is like to get to the root of why do people do things, what's pushing them to keep going, because I mean, for
Yeah.
me, I can keep spinning the wheel, I can keep going to my job, but when you're making something and you're doing it for someone or, for yourself, you have to do it for yourself too.
Hmm.
You know, you're like, well, why am I doing this? So no, that's I think that's really beautifully well explained because I don't see enough Orphie. I don't think Orphie is as much of a present theme in your current work.
Well, I mean, I like Orphie because he's easy to like render in Bing. Like you put the prompt in, and more often than not, he looks exactly the way he is. It's not like other Squishmallows where Bing just gives him a tail or whatever and or limbs. I'm like, no, I don't want this. But also, people like vehicles more, but because again, just to circle back to the
Hmm.
way back before to the vehicles. It's like I don't know. I think a lot of people they have this connection with cars. Like even if you're not a car enthusiast, you know of cars. And seeing a car leak, key itself, whatever, in I don't know, a Target or whatever, it's relatable but also foreign at the same time. I remember I think my first uh vehicle artwork was a Renault or a Peugeot, some French car, some piece of shit from France, peeing itself in the middle of a Target bathroom. And this was before being uh censored out pee, so I was able to do pee. And I don't know what it was, like, but between the Amtrak robbing a bank and Renault Peugeot peeing itself at Target, I was just doing so much CCT footage of, I don't know, a Subaru robbing a McDonald's, an Oldsmobile Cutlass being bullied by high school students, so on and so on. But there's just something about a car not only being where a car doesn't belong, but a car peeing. It was just so cursed. Like so out of the blue that I just felt I had to take this idea, grab it by the throat and throttle it. Just peeing everywhere. A Datsun peeing at a Best Buy. A Ford Explorer peeing in a playground. So on and so on. And the comments were so this is horrible, blah blah. The comments were mixed. Like it was either this is horrible, you should be ashamed of yourself, you're a disappointment to your family, or this is so funny because it's cursed, and I just kept doing it. And eventually it got to the point to where one of the moderators sent me a message. One of the moderators of the Cursed AI group, he sent me a message. He was like, "Hey, knock it off." I'm like, "Okay," and I left it be for a little bit, and then I went back to it. And I think they had to implement some system to where like they had to approve posts because I was doing it so much, and they just said they just got to the point where they were like, "Fuck it." Too many people are getting caught up in this one guy's mess, so we'll just ignore it. And there's so
Right, we'll
many people,
tolerate it.
yeah, begrudgingly. And then there were so many people who were like doing their own vehicles, and people would tag me into it, tag me in the comments, and they're like, "No, this guy's stealing your thunder." And I'm all like, "No, vehicles are royalty free. Anyone can do them."
They belong to everyone.
Yeah, and eventually Bing stopped us. they censored P, so I had to get creative with the
What
prompts.
terms have you used over the time since P is no longer allowed?
Uh, I used beer first, but but the beer was it came out too translucent. Like you couldn't tell if it was beer or like some kind of water. And then I tried lemonade, but and that seemed to work because it had like the same kind of uh viscosity as pee, but it would always add lemons to the scene, which I didn't always want. So so I ended up but because I don't need any fruit lemons, the cars themselves are already lemons. They're literally peeing themselves. I don't think Honda uh intended that. But and then I evolved, got into like engine fluids, transmission fluids, and I just settled on yellow coolant because coolant is kind of like a broad term for any liquid that comes from a part of an engine. And I like the way coolant looked because it had like a thinner viscosity than say transmission fluid, which looks a lot thicker. And some people they comment and they're like, "Is this supposed to be pea or nacho cheese?" Because it's too thick. And I'm all like, "It's whatever you want to be, but I think it's pea." So and now somehow Bing got caught on because they blocked yellow coolant.
They did. I tried
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do it with my podcast image, and they wouldn't let me do it, so I did lemonade.
yeah, they blocked yellow coolant, but if you say like yellow radiator coolant, yellow transmission coolant, it'll let you do it, but just yellow coolant in and of itself it doesn't allow. And sometimes I can have a little bit of fun with that. Like sometimes I'll do like helicopter coolant, bicycle coolant. It's just obviously things that don't like broad coolants that don't exist.
Exist.
Yeah, that I do just as like a gag. And I mean, it works. People like them now.
Yeah, I just think it's funny because whenever you do like a normal image, they're always like, "Where's the piss, Phil?"
Yeah, yeah. It's like a fucking. It's either where's the pee, and when I do one with a vehicle, they're like, "Why? What's wrong with you?" It's like you can never win with these people.
They're the
Never.
toughest critics.
Literally. Well, the toughest critic is yourself. But if you lower your standards to a point to where I've reached, the you can't really criticize yourself. I do I do like computer animation, source filmmaker crap, and I hold that in a much higher regard than I do vehicles. Actually, it actually stresses me out. It used to stress me out, but once I turned like 25, 26, I just got to where I'm like, hey, I don't care. I'm doing this for myself. If you don't like it, I mean, it's too bad.
Right. I'm sure there's people who are going to come, away from this interview. I'm like, wow, that was like a waste of my time. That sucked. That's actually where
Literally.
the name The Dog's Breath came. I was talking to some friends. I'm like, man, what should I call my new podcast? And one of my friends is like, you should call it Dog Breath because it's going to suck. It's going to stink. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to own it. I'm going to own it. That this is for me and this is something that I just want to do and that's interesting to me. And if you're along for the ride, that's cool. But like, more power to you if you don't like what I have to say or the people that I bring on what they have to say. That's the beauty of life. I found that I spent half of my life people pleasing and doing things that look cool to other people, but just being unhappy and devolving into like imposter syndrome. And again, mid-20s, you're like, fuck it, I don't want to be living for other people. I don't want to be doing things that just are impressive but don't give me any fulfillment in life.
Also, I feel like if you name your podcast the Dog's Breath, you can't really expect uh, a viewer or someone who tunes in. They really shouldn't be holding too high expectations. No offense to you, but I mean it's. I mean,
No, I
what?
totally get it.
Yeah, what do you expect from something named Dog Breath? I mean, are you expecting like Animal Planet tier fucking Animal Advice? No, thank you.
No, the problem with the dog's breath is it doesn't describe anything. It doesn't tell you anything about what I'm doing with the show or what the scope or the plot is. It's just a name that just is unappealing. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
great.
true. Yeah.
With the vehicles, just hearing you talk about it, it sounds that in a way there's almost like a sense of distress that comes with it, that the car pissing itself represents distress. I mean, maybe I'm reading into it too much. Maybe there is no meaning to it. Maybe it's up to the viewer to find his own meaning in it. Is there really a meaning at the
Uh,
end of the day to the car pissing itself, or is it just merely funny, haha, pee?
when I first started doing the vehicle AI, it was always the car in like a bad situation. I remember an Oldsmobile Cutlass being bullied by high school students in a high school. Like they were always, you know, like situations we would find undesirable, but applied to vehicles. Like obviously no one wants to be bullied by high school students. Obviously no one wants to pee themselves in the middle of a Best Buy, but I mean, here's cars doing it. And I guess in a way you could say that one of my favorite vehicle ones is one I did of a Toyota Camry or a Honda's one of those early 2000s Japanese sedans inside of a Dunkin' Donuts, sitting in a puddle of pee. But the car has like a mouth, like not a cartoon mouth, like a human mouth, and it's licking the pee. Like, not only does no one want to pee themselves at a Dunkin', no one wants to lick their own pee. So, I mean, I don't know. Germans do, Brazilians do, but not me. So, I don't know. I
Teach
mean,
their
I
own.
get. I guess there is some kind of distress to the vehicles, but I don't really. And yeah, it was intentionally like distressing, but I mean, now it's just funny. Now it's just something to be expected.
Right? Is the reaction of the community part of what keeps you going?
Yeah, like as much as I like likes, I love comments because I can like see how it touched someone. I can see how disgusted someone was. I can answer questions. I just like seeing people. I don't know. Some people are like, my news feed is nothing without vehicles. One of them was like, I'm so tired of politics. I'm so happy to see vehicles. And I said, ha ha, I'm putting the P in politics. Yeah.
Oh man. No, that's how I got brought into the group. I wouldn't have ever been in that group without vehicles. I mean, the
Yeah,
rest of
really.
it, no, it's funny. What happened is there's some of
Mm.
my friends who are not only reposting it, but they're reposting it like onto their actual like Facebook with everyone to see.
Yeah.
So in my regular feed, I was seeing cars pissing themselves. I'm like, man, I got to check this out. And yeah, no, it's what brought me in. I mean, there's some other funny ones once in a while, but I think the level of absurdity that comes with the car, being on CCTV footage and somehow making it, that's the other astounding question is how it even made into the building in the first place. Not even
Yeah.
how it has sentience or it has urine, but every single time I see the image, I just can't help cackling to myself. And then it's the same thing. I'll go in the comments seeing all these people who are either pissed off or kind of doing this weird ironic cheer on. Then you get the people who are like really into it. I'm like, man, this is amazing. This is all you could want in one package.
I, I I
Um,
I genuinely think vehicles, all jokes aside, I think its appeal has to do with the American, probably European and Asian too, but mostly American love for automobiles. Like the fetishization of cars and just wanting to see something that's genuinely cursed. Like I think if not the combination of those two, vehicles would just have gone the way of the giant of Kandahar or fucking Jeffing or whatever new fads come and go in the group. The new fad
right.
now is Bread Klimp, the fucking possum with the wizard hat.
I haven't seen that one actually.
It's funny that the guy who makes him, his name's Matt. He and we message each other every now and then on Facebook to share prompts, etc. You should get
Inspiration.
him in on next. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. If you would link me up with him, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll let him know. But yeah, a lot of his stuff is like grainy disposable camera footage. I do CCTV footage. There's something about those two mediums, like those two framing devices for images, that's
Right.
both cursed, because obviously you get the ooh, it's grainy, it was on a VHS, it's scary stigma, but also again with vehicles, it's relatable because like we've all seen CCTV footage. A lot of us, unless you were born in like 2015, know about disposable cameras and know about the quality. I mean, any camera is disposable if you're rich enough, but
Hmm.
I'm talking about like the fucking flash cameras you would buy at like CVS or Walgreens, and they had like
Yeah.
20 rolls of film on it, and when you were done, you just turned the rolls of film in and just threw it out.
Right. No, I know exactly what you mean. I grew up with those, man. I would take those on field trips. I remember I went to like sleepaway camp in 5th grade, and we the high school kids we were with, they were like the cool high school kids.
Yeah.
So they would let us, use all of our contraband and play rap music really loud in the middle of our cabin and stuff like that. And there was one, I think it was the only group photo that we took as a group. We and this, mind you, this is 5th grade. We all decided to, stand together on one side of the room and to all give the camera the finger. And we thought it'd be the coolest picture ever. And someone gets it processed to Target, right?
Yeah.
Target alerts like the parent of this kid, what's on the film. So
Yeah.
we all get called into the principal's office, and they're like, "Can you explain this?" And they show us this picture, and the fucking person who is developing it at Target brightened out every single middle figure, so most of the image is just this bright white light, and all these kids like smiling super nicely and innocently. And it's one of the fucking funniest images I've ever seen. I haven't seen it since. I
I
so badly want to see it.
I would love to imagine like there's pictures of y'all like smoking crack and giving each other fucking sharing needles with one another, pirating videos. But like that's the worst thing. Like that's the thing that broke the camel's back. Just y'all giving the camera the finger.
I have talked to people like who I went to, because we all went to high school and whatever. So I've talked to them since the past year or two. I'm like, hey, does anyone have that photo? And it's pretty much lost. I think, that kind of ties into, these forced perspectives with these images is because it's almost like found footage. There's a
Yeah,
little more
yeah,
of a
you're right.
novelty of it
Hmm.
beyond just, oh, here's an image of, this crazy thing going on. Just there's not much in terms of an actual framing device in terms of what's going on in the scene.
Yeah, yeah. Like
I think it.
if you
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I was just gonna
you're
allude. Oh my
good.
goodness, sorry.
Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
if you don't add, sorry, if you don't add a framing device, I almost said framing advice. If you don't add a framing device, sometimes Bing will just make one up for you, and it'll just make the proportions really, really weird, or it'll give it like some kind of cartoony art style. And I mean, yeah, it's cursed, but I mean, it's not how you imagined it in your head, and sometimes uh being it gives you like 15 credits a day to work with, and if you go over those credits, it takes like 2 minutes whatever to render an image. And I've had times where I go through all 15 credits with the same prompt, trying to get it like exactly the way I pictured it in my head. And I mean, it's I don't know. I'll never acknowledge AI as an actual art form, but wording the prompt, that's what I consider the art. That's the true creativity. Like, to not only get something that looks dumb, funny, whatever, but also to word it in the way it comes out exactly, or or even better than how you imagined it. I think that's where the true art, where the true skill and talent comes in. Like like for example, recently I've been doing Rugrats. Like like
Right.
uh like the episode of Rugrats where they're involved in some bad historical event, like the Rugrats episode where Bud Dwyer kills himself. The Rugrats episode where they're causing the uh Bhopal chemical disaster. Like obviously, if you type in uh uh for example the Rugrats episode where they're in the Heaven's Gate cult and drink Kool-Aid and kill themselves into Bing, that's going to kick you out. That's going to say uh prompt blocked, fuck you, try again. But if you do um the Rugrats episode where they're all dressed in identical tracksuits and drinking Kool-Aid before sleeping in bunk beds with blankets over their heads, then then, then that goes through. And obviously if you know of the event, you would you know what you're
Right.
getting at. And if you don't know the event, then it gives you a perfect opportunity to look it up. You know, you might learn something. Like if you didn't know about the Rugrats causing the Bhopal chemical disaster, obviously they didn't because they weren't even alive back then. But if you didn't know the original event, you would probably be inclined to look it up and say, "Hey, these Union Carbide guys, they're not that nice." And maybe it'll make people aware and stuff, but again, how much can someone do? I've
Right.
had so many people message me about like, what do you think a future with AI is gonna look like? And I say to them all, I make peeing cars. There are smarter people you could be asking.
I know exactly what you mean because I thought about that when I was writing up some of my questions and my guiders. I'm like, do I really want to actually engage in a serious conversation
Oh,
regarding the morality of AI, whether AI is art? You know, I mean, you kind of touched on a little bit of your opinion on that, but it's like, man, I'm talking to the dude who makes peeing cars and makes Rugrats, enact like the most fucked up
Rugrats
moments in
goes to
history.
fucking Waco. But I mean, I do feel like as we see AI evolve, it's like cars back then. You know, the only
Hmm.
people who had cars were really rich people. Maybe only two or three in the world had them, and then they started becoming more affordable. So many people were just driving into everyone. Blah blah blah. So, and then fucking cars just became a part of life. You know, we had laws regarding cars, regulations, and I mean, I as much as people are going to probably hate me for saying it, but I mean, we can't uninvent AI. It's the same way how we have so much gun problems, but we just can't uninvent guns. You know, like with AI, the only thing we can really do probably is just, just I don't know. As far as
Right.
creators go, is there a moral responsibility for someone who makes AI images to not be misleading? Of course there is, but I mean, you could say, for example, Vladimir Putin leaking yellow coolant all over Moscow. Some idiot can look at that and say, "Oh my God, Vladimir Putin is peeing all over his constituents." And like there's some responsibility to the viewer as well to be able to differentiate what's real and what's fictional. And I mean, admittedly, it's hard to tell sometimes if you frame if you frame AI perfectly, if you give it a good enough framing device and make it believable. It's hard to tell sometimes. I mean, admittedly, yeah, there's been times when I've been fooled by AI, but I mean, I think the responsibility comes onto the viewer as much as it does the creator, because obviously people aren't going to stop making political, for example, AI artwork, text, speeches, be it be it to make fun of someone, to just for a goof, for an ulterior motive. I mean, it's really no different when you think about it than when the printing press was made, because before that, who was writing? Probably only like two or three dozen people. But the printing press is made. You get all these writers, not really all these writers, but all these people with access to publish books, to print books, and you get this sudden influx of ideas, of information, so on and so on. And I mean, it worked. I mean, obviously, it had more. I mean, I'm sure there were bad actors out there who are like, King George V is gay. He pees all over the world, and I could have thought of something funnier to say, but I didn't. But I mean, it's
Oh, it was funny.
yay. Anyway,
I have the
I mean,
maturity of a 15-year-old. You can say anything, and you'll make me laugh.
welcome to the club, buddy. But
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's going to be bad actors who are going to use AI to be like, "Uh-oh, Biden is endorsing Jeffrey Epstein. Look at this video of Biden going to Epstein's island and kissing 3-year-olds." But I mean, again, I mean, there's enough rules in place, at least with being in, I think, Mid Journey or whatever, to prevent that from happening. Because if you put in Joe Biden or anything like that, it'll just kick you out. And I mean, it sucks. It sucks if you want to make like a joke, but I mean, I get why they do that, because there's some fucking Russian guy sitting in a troll farm and he's all like, "Wee, I'm going to stir up American discourse and I used the wrong language."
Oh, I'm Russian. Oh.
Literally the average Russian spy intelligence. But
Right.
I
They don't
mean,
even know the difference.
literally. But I mean, I think it's too early really to say, because AI's only been around at least to this degree, for maybe a couple years. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember the people who were making they were
Taylor
using the
Swift.
OpenAI. Oh, there's a few things I'm sure, but the OpenAI jukebox is what first caught my eye. Where
Oh
people
yeah,
were
I like those.
those were awesome, dude. There was one guy, and I think he deleted his channel, but he would do oh, I'm gonna rewrite the SpongeBob theme in the style of a Limp Bizkit song, and it sounds stupid, but it's funny. That's part of the reason that AI is so entertaining is that its capabilities aren't there yet, if you know what I mean. Like for the
Yeah,
most part on the lower level end of things, it's still so absurd and ridiculous and the computer still can't exactly figure it out. Um I think there's still a level of human talent or at least money to get, AI to be that believable. I think the voice manipulation I've been hearing about that definitely poses a major threat. I
yeah,
think you're right on the money regarding AI's here. It's an inevitability. It's only going to get better. And I mean, this is a philosophical question we've been asking, about automatons and robots for hundreds of years. It's
yeah,
not necessarily a new question, but I think you're right on the money too. That there's only ever so much responsibility on people as content creators. It's like we present you, what we're doing. It's up to you to make your informed decision about how you feel about this, art or product. But I think there's kind of something that's to be said when people are forced to completely explain the nature of their work. It's the same thing with The Onion that, or other satirical sites that now there's certain sites that will clearly label, whether or not something is satire at the beginning of the article.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, that kind of takes the fun though a little bit. I mean, you figured that, there's certain amount of headwork that has to go into it, but that's pretty normal for any functional human being to discern, whether a ridiculous article about Vladimir Putin pissing over everyone and his constituents, whether that's real or not. It's so absurd and so ridiculous. You figured a, rational thinking person would determine, okay, that's too ridiculous to be true. Um,
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised. I remember on the note of AI, I heard on the NPR during work, there were some lawyers or paralegals, whatever, who they were doing some motions. They were writing some motions for a case, and they used ChatGPT to help them uh do the motions for a case or something. And the thing with the legal motion, if you want to put something forth, you have to cite other cases that have already used it. And ChatGPT started citing cases that didn't exist, but ChatGPT was assigning real judges to it because that's how ChatGPT works. It just pulls stuff from online, and it can pull real judges in a certain circuit court, but it can't pull actual whatever cases. So so these lawyers they put forth a motion allegedly cited by a real judge, and they presented it to another judge, and they're like, wait a minute, this is a horrible chain of evidence, and it just threw the whole fucking case out, and them lawyers got fired, and I think they got disbarred from ever practicing law. It was a while ago since I heard it, but
mhm.
I mean, again, there's just responsibility everywhere, there's as much responsibility as a creator to use AI to not provoke fights, whatever, as much as there is the viewer to be able to tell what's right from wrong. And I mean, I get it. In this day and age, it's hard. When I was a kid, I would go on Snopes and I'd be like, "Ooh, look at all these fun urban legends." And you go on Snopes now, and it's just like, "Oh boy, what did Trump say today?" And I mean, it just circles back to what I was saying before. The world's changing, and this is just, I don't know. I mean, yeah, people are being dumb about it, but I mean, some people just don't know. I mean, there's a difference between what's obviously a parody source and a real source, but also, stretching the truth, omitting some parts of the truth, so on and so forth. And I mean, there's not really much AI can do. I mean, AI, it has something to do. I'm dumb. I can't talk today, but the responsibility is also on the viewer to be able to discern, like, hey, this car really isn't in a target. It's really not peeing itself. Just as the same way as they have to discern, this really isn't Taylor Swift. She really isn't having sex with Oscar the Grouch in an alleyway. So, yeah.
Oh man, we're gonna start getting Oscar the Grouch songs.
I've no, I've seen an AI picture of Taylor Swift getting it from Oscar the Grouch, and there was a big deal about like Taylor Swift being allegedly targeted by AI, which I don't really disagree with because I don't really agree with because for one, you're a public figure. What's the difference between this and in some kid on DeviantArt doing shitty foot drawings of you? And two, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, again, any rational person can look at this and say, "Hey, this is not a real image. This is not a real depiction." It's yeah.
No, I know what you mean. I think that's the scary thing when you're making content. I don't know how much you've contemplated this. I mean, there's, you have to wonder. I mean, the world is absurd. Part of me is like, well, that's such a crazy hypothetical to think, the peeing car guy becomes famous. But I mean, anything is possible in this day and age. But
Yeah.
I don't know how much you've contemplated over the question of, wow, what if I actually become more known, and the whole, and soon people will start making satire of me, which you already see a little bit.
Yeah, I
People like,
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
they're making somewhat of satire. I mean, I've made an image or two where I think I did one where it was like a computer screen of the Facebook page of the group and the whole, the computer's looking pissed. And I'm like, oh, this is my loving tribute to my inspiration, for
Yeah.
AI art. So you already see that a little bit of people like expecting something out of you, but I think that's there's something that has to be said for the unfortunate human nature of having to deal with people and being known by a wide crop of people, and not all people are great. I know
Well, I
I'm like
mean,
kind of, yeah.
there's worse things you could be known for. I mean, I'd rather be known as the guy who makes peeing cars on the internet as opposed to the guy that beat his grandmother up with a bag of wet dog food. There's a lot worse things to be known for.
Oh, sure. You end up, I'm sure, being in Florida with the Florida man phenomenon. There's quite a many a men who are known for absurd and awful crimes.
I've heard,
Um,
I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that Florida isn't really any weirder than any other states. We just had that reputation because uh, the courts in Florida, almost all of them are public record. Like for example, you could go to the clerk of court site in my county, look my name up,
mhm.
see what traffic tickets I got, and it's all public record, and people can see more arrest information and infer, oh, these people in this state got arrested for rubbing mustard all over themselves and punching a cop. This must be a crazy state. But there's like 49 other states. What else is going on? But yeah,
Right.
Florida is a very lax state when it comes to like public information.
Right. I'm sure that's a blessing and a curse at the same time, but
Well, I mean
yeah.
the guy who's trying to sue me, the drunk guy who almost hit me on a bike, and he's trying to sue me. I went to the clerk of court site for his county, and I looked him up. I found a divorce. I found a small claims case between him and a credit card company. I found property deeds. I found I just found so much that like I probably would not be able to find if we lived in, I don't know, Vermont, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes tracking people, as awful as it sounds, but as beneficial as it sounds to my case, it just makes tracking people and making a reference, whatever, just a lot easier. But I mean, again, it depends on, whether you're using this stuff as a reference or if you're a bad actor who's using it. And I mean, I don't know.
No, I know what you mean. I think all information, especially, the more information, the better. I think people should learn more. I think, that's the great thing about the internet is you're free to learn as much as you want,
Oh, definitely.
outside of the bounds of a classroom, but it's how you use that information. Um, it's the same thing, with everything else we've been talking about with AI and, being able to wield, technology in a much more convenient way. It's like, okay, it's a matter of how you use it. Just because people use it in a bad way doesn't inherently make that method evil. I think we just have to learn to adapt with that. As much as, in our case, we're pretty much just abusing that technology to make ridiculous, farcical art. Um,
Literally.
um, have you always had like, I mean, kind of cycling back to the Rugrats because I've been wanting to ask, with Rugrats acting, in these, various historical situations, combining worlds. Has history always been an interest for you? Like, was that kind of your stronger suit when you were in school?
I liked history when I was in school. It was probably the only class I was good at. And I don't know. I lived through 9/11. That's history. When I was seven, 7 or 8, I think 6 or 7. Whenever it was, I lived through the DC sniper, and if you or the listeners don't know what it was these two guys, and they were driving around uh the DC metro area where I lived at the time, and they would park their car and they would shoot people out of a hole in the trunk, like just people at random, and they would just shoot them and drive off. And and I lived through that, and I remember the news reports saying it's a guy in a white van. They would put tarp over the gas stations to hide us. When we were pumping gas, they would tell us to walk in a zigzag between the store and the car in the parking lot. And they caught the guys like a month later. It was just these two guys in a blue Caprice, and it just blew all of us out of the water. But I don't know. I think living in a historical, you don't realize it at the time, and obviously compared to 9/11, the DC sniper really wasn't anything. But I don't know. There's just something about being in that close proximity to something historical to have some kind of profound effect on your life or something like that.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I can't say much of too much personal experience. Obviously, I think there's always the little personal historical events in our own life, right? You sharing previously how certain really hard events in your life have impacted how you perceive things, and again, how that expresses in your work. I think it's the same thing, even just witnessing events, especially in the age where we're all digital witnesses, with any fucked up, terrible thing. I mean, only a couple of weeks ago, we saw, a U.S. airman set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy, and everyone saw that,
Oh, what the?
you know.
When was this? I did not hear about that.
Really?
Really?
Let me see. Because that was like a minute ago. and it was, all sorts of media stations were showing it. Was on YouTube. He actually broadcasted it on Twitch.
Oh boy.
So I mean, we're in that age where we're witnesses to everything now. Everything is so much more real because information moves so quickly. See, I'm seeing the article.
Yeah, yeah, but I feel
About
like
two
there's
weeks
a
ago.
difference. Okay, I don't know. I feel like there's a difference between like experiencing it through like a camera or something, and then like seeing it in real life. Because I don't know, like seeing it through a screen or something. Like, yeah, it's disturbing. I'm not going to disagree, but there's still that disconnect. It's like a framing device. Even if it's
Right.
real, you're looking at it through like a screen, and you could be like, oh, this is just like a movie. This is some show, whatever you want to say to help you sleep at night and or whatever. But if you actually live through it, you're like, wow. So I don't know.
No, I get what you mean. I think it's that feeling of your own mortality being on the line. Of wow, this is
Yeah.
real. This is right in front of me. This could affect me, and my own well-being, my very being here. That definitely sets the really real, aside from just being a witness in that sense, a digital witness.
Yeah.
So, no, I always found that because I think that's a common theme in the Cursed AI group that I see a lot of people referencing very niche historical events. And I often notice there'll be a disconnect between the people who immediately go to the sad react, the people who know what they're referencing, and then people like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
Sometimes people are referencing like very, very specific, like fucked up videos on the internet from the early 2000s. I think there's
Oh boy.
some commonality, for those of us who were born in the mid 90s and or late 90s. So we were early adopters and pioneers of the internet, but it also we grew up with it being a given, right? We never knew a time without it, you know.
Mhm.
Not as much as say like my parents generation where not only does it affect your perception, your expectation of how you receive information, I think it affects like even just the way you perceive things, the sense of humor. I think, I don't know, if you spent much time on early 2000s YouTube as I did, but
Oh
it's funny
boy.
when yeah, like
Yeah.
just YouTube poop and like, really, bad compilation videos of like what is it? Like Stormtrooper gyrating with the Crash Bandicoot music playing in the background. I
Oh
don't know if you
boy.
remember that.
But I know the GIF because it was on Encyclopedia, and I used to love that dumb site when I was a kid. But now I'm like, no, this is awful. How did I like this? It's not funny at all. And I go to
Right.
Encyclopedia Dramatica, which I mean, it's not better at all, but that site is still stuck in like the mid 2000s mindset and still got all the memes and references from like when I was that age. It's like a time capsule, like some depraved, awful time capsule.
Right. The collective internet trauma we all had from essentially having completely unlimited access to the internet and, being on the boards, being on, yeah, I've definitely been on Encyclopedia Dramatica and it's an awful, awful, awful place. But I feel that that's what forms my humor and my perception of things and why the Cursed AI group, you know, appeals to me so much. Like, man, these are the people who saw the same awful shit I did growing up. Let's just rejoice in that a little bit.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh man, wow. So almost 2 hours of conversation. It's been good. It's been a
Yes.
pleasure talking to you. Do you have any closing remarks or thoughts? I mean, aside from that, maybe my last kind of thought was, outside of pizza delivery, outside of vintage cars, we didn't even really get to touch on trains, unless you wanted to talk about trains.
Eh,
You know,
I like trains, but I mean, I just got so much going on right now to where I just literally don't have the time to sit there and model them. I don't know. I think the closest that I come to is just going to like Facebook groups, like a train club where we all act like boomers and see some guy poking fun at like some fucking boomers Lionel sets. And it's like, yeah, because Lionel is the worst of them all. It's funny.
Yeah, my grandfather was a train guy, so it's endearing because in my mind it's like, man, you have your hobby, and even if it's a hobby I don't understand, like more power to you. I
Yeah.
think there's always an emboldening. It's like when I talk to people about music and they're always like, "Don't judge me but I really like this artist." And I'm like, "I'm not going to judge you. If that's what you enjoy and you own that, that's awesome." Um, I mean, I enjoy trains, maybe not to the boomer degree, but would you say then your plate's pretty filled between making peeing cars, delivering pizza, and working on your own car?
I mean, making peeing cars that barely. I don't want to flex. I know it sounds like a flex, but it only takes up like maybe half an hour of my time. Other time, the whole rest of my time, I'm just working on Grand Theft Auto mods and playing TF2. I don't know. I feel like trains is something I'll just get back into later in life because that happens with a lot of with a lot of people. They'll have a hobby when they were a kid, and as adults, they're like, "Oh no, real life is happening. I must step away or I'll go bankrupt." And then when they're like 50, 60, whatever, they're like, "Oh, what's this?" And right now I'm just hoarding boxes of like model buildings and model engines and stuff. And I don't know. All I know is that when I'm 40, 50, whatever years old, I'm going to open them up and I'm going to have a fun fucking time.
That's awesome, dude.
Oh
Yeah, I
yeah.
totally know what you mean. I mean, this podcast, it's kind of like my fun. Like now I can show people what I'm interested in, but a lot of it is, I agree, it's just playing video games, you know, watching stuff, just kind of hanging out in between, the grind of working the hours.
Hmm.
That's all I do. So, is there any like, I guess, because the general theme of my podcast, is showing people what inspires them, content creators to inspire them to do what they do. Like, what's the message you would like to set for the viewers on home? And maybe what can we expect further out of your AI? Are we going to see more Rugrats? Are we going to see other cartoons? Are we going to see more pissing vehicles? Are we going to see other things piss themselves? Like, what do you have in the future for this? And I think people would love to see your source filmmaker stuff and mods.
Uh,
So I think I'd
I'll
love to touch that.
yeah,
Thanks.
thank you. I'll link you the my channel that I do all that stuff on, so you can drop it in the comments or the description, whatever. But
Hmm.
the only thing I don't know, what was I gonna say? I'm gonna keep doing Rugrats just because it is an awful looking cartoon. Even when I was a child, I knew this was a disgusting, abhorrent art style. Everyone looked like they were diseased. It was a very aesthetically displeasing cartoon, and it wasn't like Ren and Stimpy where it was like that on purpose. It just came off that way, and every what was the studio that made Rugrats? Was it Klasky Cuckold? I
Lasky.
don't fucking.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was. It was.
yeah. Klasky Cuckold. None of their shows looked good. Uh, Rocket Power didn't look good. It's Told by Ginger didn't look good. The Wild Animals, whatever it's called, that didn't
The
look
Wild
good.
Thornberries.
Yeah,
That was
close enough.
the guy who went. "Blah."
Yeah, yeah, Hank Hill.
Yeah, Hank
But
Hill. Absolutely. Hell yeah.
yeah, Hank Hill on the Wild Thornberries. But I don't know. I mean,
Damn it, Bobby.
not only that, but Rugrats. Um, I get the best results from them when I put them through AI, because there's other shows. The Angry Beavers. I loved that show when I was a kid, but it doesn't have an AI, any semblance of AI. God damn.
Gotcha.
I'm going off on a tangent. I remember when I was a
No, keep
kid.
going. That's good.
You're good. When I was a kid, uh, like 2003, 2004, Nickelodeon was trying to phase Rugrats out. Not Rugrats, the Angry Beavers out. And the way they were doing that was giving it really weird time slots, very inconsistent time slots. So unless you were looking at your cable guide or unless you were actively watching it at the time, you would not have known they were airing it. So I don't know. This one time, I knew I'd be out of the house, and my dad knew I loved the Rugrats, so he set the VCR to record the Rugrats. And I go home, I turn it on, I watch VHS back, and for whatever reason, there was no dialogue. Like there was the music and the sound effects, but there was no dialogue. And I guess I know this sounds like a fucking creepy pasta, but I swear on his grave it happened. And I think what it was, some waterhead in Nickelodeon aired a version of the episode, aired a tape that was intended to be sent overseas to be redubbed as opposed to the actual episode itself. And when I moved, that episode got lost in an estate sale. And I am kicking myself in the ass to this day because I would love to have just digitized it and put it online and be like, wow, look at this idiot in Nickelodeon. It's probably the guy they caught on To Catch a Predator, airing a master dub whatever version instead of that actual version. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that's the one tangent. And I guess the one thing that I hope for AI creators in the future is to share your prompts. I think I'm the only creator. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong, actually. I usually am, but I wish more creators would share their prompts so I don't have to be awkward and comment, hey, what was the prompt you used to get this? Because if we all work together, we can all make collectively curse things. It's not fun to gatekeep. You're not really benefiting anything. It's valueless. It's not like your prompt is. I mean, obviously your prompt is special because I'm asking you to share it. But I mean, I don't know. You're not going to get anything if you don't share it. If that makes any remotely any sense.
Right, because it's the process. It's not merely the art itself. It's the process of how you achieved to get those results.
Yeah.
That makes AI engaging. So I totally get what you mean. I mean, it's hard to, make this like an overly deep thing where it's like, okay, I'm just making stupid images on, Bing to make people laugh. But I think, what I hope that the viewer takes away from this is they see Phil, as the content creator, but they see Phil the man and, what brought him to make these images and also just what other great stuff are you doing? I mean, that was really impressive to me to know that you're doing mods, I mean, that could be a whole, other episode just on how you got into modding and
Just a Grand Theft Auto mod where all the cars leak yellow coolant.
hey, I'd love to see it. That would be great. Just a piss covered Grand Theft Auto map. I would totally. I don't know if I'd pay money for that, but I would install it.
Grand Theft Auto Berlin.
Perfect. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, great. So yeah, I'll definitely be linking that stuff. Great having you on. Obviously would love to talk to other AI creators and maybe to some point we can do like a more of a panel conversation. I think
Yeah,
there's a lot
I'll
more
tell.
to explore.
Yeah, I'll tell Matt to get a hold of you because he's a bread climp guy. That's the one that's in right now. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I'll tell him to get a hold of you, and hopefully something comes out of it.
Great. No, it was a great pleasure talking to you, Phil. Hopefully we'll get you back on the show again because there's,
Thank
so much I'd love to more unearth, but trying to make it not too unlistenable. I think 2 hours is pretty fruitful, but Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Hope to see more
Well,
of your stuff on, and hopefully, someone actually listened all the way through this.